Welcome to the show. I'm Danella, and here's what's happening now. In our world, guess what? Sad to say, infants' social security numbers are up for sale on the dark net. Is your baby affected? How can you protect yourself? We'll talk about that in our world. Also on deck, something crazy happened to me this week. It's still affecting me right now. I'd love to hear any advice you'd have on what I should do next. And why don't we just kick off the show right now with Political Pop. Here is your Political Pop for Friday, January 26th. Trump approved tariffs on both washing machines and solar panels this week. We'll talk about why it's a big deal because already we're seeing effects right now. Okay, so here's what happened. As soon as this was announced, we saw stocks of Whirlpool go up, and Whirlpool said they're going to open up 200 more jobs. Also, shares in solar panels, they went up as well. So let's talk about some of the backlash though. We'll start with LG Electronics. They've already announced that they are raising the cost of their washing machines. And think about it, most people buy washing machines and dryers together. Increase expenses on both. Environmentalists argue that making solar panels more expensive, well, it puts the US back at developments in renewable energy. And that was your Political Pop. Now, Philadelphia officials say this. They say that they want to start opening up injection sites, safe injection sites. I talked about this in a previous show. They offer this in Vancouver. The idea is that you can go to a safe injection site and you can shoot up whether it's heroin or fentanyl in a safe place. Keep in mind, Philadelphia has the highest opioid death rate of any major city here in the US. Not sure if the city of Philadelphia will do it, so we shall see. Also in the news, I just signed your death warrant. That is what the judge said when sentencing Larry Nassar. Remember, this was the sports doctor who was guilty of molesting young female athletes. Well, this is what the judge did. Sentenced him to 40 to 175 years in jail. And everyone is wondering, how could he have gotten away with this for so long? First, we'll start at the USA Gymnastics. How were they able to keep this concealed for so long? Decades. 3 board members so far this week have resigned, and the U.S. Olympic Committee is calling for the resignation of the other remaining members. Now, we'll talk about this. Several companies so far, sponsors, have pulled out. Also, the president of Michigan State University has stepped down. She was in office for 13 years, and how could she have allowed this to happen? That's what people want to know, as Nassar was employed to MSU from 1997 to 2016. And now it's time for In Our World. Cyber criminals say that they are selling the social security numbers of infants. This is crazy on the dark web. Here's what the ad said. Get them before tax season. Because apparently tax season is when most identity thefts happen. For 300 Bitcoins, you can own the information to an infant. That's crazy. Social security number. And what some folks are doing are just pairing a child's social security number with their own name or a fake name. And unfortunately, when you're talking about infants and even children, it's hard to even detect that their information has been stolen. And they normally don't even catch it until they start to apply for credit cards, when they're older. Terrible. And here are some of the warning signs that you can look out for. For example, if you start seeing credit card applications show up to your home, that means your child's information has been hacked. Also, you can sign up for an alert. That way you can know if your child's social security number has a credit history. And they also add this, I never thought about this, but jury summons. Yeah, that would seem crazy if your 5-year-old gets a jury summons, but if your 5-year-old does, that means your child's information has been hacked. You must continue to be vigilant to protect yourself. Now, before we wrap up the show, I want to talk to you about a situation that happened earlier this week. If you follow on Facebook, I posted about this scenario, and I want to talk to you about this scenario and some of the advice I have. And hey, if you have any advice, let me know. So here's the situation. I'm recording my political pop, earlier in the week, and my husband, he's like, rushes in and he's like, Danella, come outside, come downstairs quick, come outside. There's a baby crying on the street. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? So I go down the steps, and as I get further down the steps, I start thinking, I hear him talking about a baby in a diaper, barefoot, and I start thinking, I'm like, please don't let that be my neighbor. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about the neighbor, but basically, the baby's outside crying, a 1-year-old boy wearing a diaper and a t-shirt. And remember, like, we had snow in our area, so there's still salt on the ground, and so this poor baby is just crying. So I'm knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, nothing's happening. So I decide to turn the doorknob. When I turn the doorknob, I look inside. There's the 2-year-old brother that's there. And I say, where's mommy? And he basically is like, as a 2-year-old, mommy's at work. But I can hear a shower, and I'm thinking the mom can't be at work, but I don't know who's in the house. And, I know the mom, but I don't know other people that live in the house. So I don't want to get shot or anything like that. So I'm just like, what do I do? So long story short, it brought up so many questions. The first question was specifically with my husband. He said, listen, if you weren't here, of course I would have ran out to get the baby. Because when I got back in, I said, why didn't you go out and get the baby? And he said, he brought up his concerns as a black man, saying that somebody might think he was trying to hurt the baby. And it really shocked me because I never, thought about life in that way. It really shocked me. And then just also knowing how my husband is as a dad, even before we had our son, he's the kind of man that, he loves kids. He's really hands-on. He plays. He's so kind, so generous. And for him to just not be able to be who he really is, which is helpful, loving, out of fear that love could be misinterpreted for hurt. And I said that to him, like, I mean, that's a crazy dichotomy to just experience. And he said to me, yes, it's unnatural. That's what he said to me. And it broke my heart. And it started to make me think also specifically about what I'm going to teach my son. In my mind, I want to teach my son to be brave, to be fearless, but I don't want to lead him down a path to be hurt. So these are some of the ideas that came up. But here's the thing, separate from my neighbor, I have seen this so often, and it's like this: parents, please stop allowing TV to babysit your children. Please, is there any way? Please. And I am a mom, and I do know that sometimes, especially if you're making dinner, you might want to throw on the TV and let your child watch that, and it buys you some time to do other things. So I'm not talking about in like you're in the house, And the other thing is this: stop allowing older adults to keep your kids every single day without end and no money. Now, again, I'm not talking about my neighbor and her specific situation. So if she's watching, don't be offended. I'm just saying in general. And my observation in the world, this happens. People pass on their children to older adults, and it's exhausting. Your grandma needs a break. Grandma's tired. She needs a break. Auntie needs a break. Your neighbor needs a break. And the truth is, I said this on Facebook, I get that it takes a village, but we cannot forget that parents, we are the nucleus of that village. Now, I know I have a lot of men that watch my podcast. Leave me a comment. What do you think? Do you agree with my husband? The idea of, it's better to get your wife because people can misinterpret your love for hate, and it puts you in a precarious situation. And I'll say this, someone from Facebook wrote in, and he was saying growing up in the 50s and 60s, he never saw adults in general pick up children that weren't their own. He said he'd never seen that before, so it wasn't commonplace. And he was saying also he didn't think it was race related, but more male related. And he brought up just watching, he was a fan of Steve Wilko's show, and he was saying, I don't watch Steve Wilko, but I'm familiar with it. But he was saying that on that show, seeing so many people abuse their kids, step parents, even parents, And so he was just saying in the world that we live in, it's very common to think that. And I do have to agree with him on that, especially as a woman. I'm very cautious about men around children in a physical way, like if you have a daughter, you would teach your daughter you don't sit on men's laps, that kind of thing. So I do understand that. But in a crisis, I don't know. I just feel like, you should be able to step in and help. So is it race related? Is it not race related? Is it something that we should continue to pass down out of necessity, out of survival? What I'd like to say, my answer is this is what I'm getting more resolve to being, but I'd love to still hear your input. In my mind, I think it's a balance between both. I believe that I want to teach my son to be fearless. I want him to be brave. I also want him to have empathy. I want him to understand that others may fear him. And I want him to respond to their fear with empathy, with understanding. I don't want him to respond to their fear with anger or respond with fear. That's how I feel. But we shall see. Again, he's only 2. But I need a plan, and I'm a planner. So yeah, that about wraps up our show this week. As always, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate your feedback as always. I really do, so thank you. Please keep your comments coming. And those of you that email, I read and I respond. You know that, but some people don't think I do, so please, you can feel free to email. You can email me, Danella@DanellaNOW.com. So, as always, have an incredible weekend, and I will see you next week.